one. We're live.
What's up, everybody? It's Adam Kemper and Andrew Rosso. This is Pitch the World. This is our episode 4, and we're so thrilled to have with us today Brian Cuban. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be on.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. We know it's opening day in baseball, and a lot of people are watching the games right now. So,
Of more importance, I was about to pick my nose, and I realized we're live. So I'm glad I caught myself.
It's opening day in baseball, so a lot of fun stuff going on, and we're happy to have our audience join us today on our 4th episode. In terms of the last 3 episodes, on our first one, we were thrilled to have the original shark from Shark Tank, Kevin Harrington, join in and give us some of his insights as to his time on Shark Tank, his role with Pitch Investors Live, and just some tremendous secrets to help entrepreneurs. In episode 2, we had the founder of Pitch Investors Live, Matthew Lawley, and he talked about sort of what led him to Pitch Investors Live, sort of his early road bumps and trials and tribulations of starting a business and being an entrepreneur. And in the last episode, we had Dr. Lisa Herman of Synergy eTherapy. And she dove into another very interesting topic that Drew and I are passionate about, and that's the issue of mental health. And Dr. Lisa runs an e-therapy practice, providing basically telemedicine, therapeutic services to people where she's licensed, and she has people providing telemedicine therapeutic services to people throughout the country. So the great thing about Synergy Therapy is that, she and some of the doctors in her practice can actually provide therapy from her phone, from the computer, and to people on the go, which is kind of what Pitch Investors Live, some of the same sort of technology that Pitch Investors Live has, which is you can pitch somebody from your phone, from your computer, anywhere in the world, and you can receive a pitch as well. So, we were thrilled to have Dr. Lisa on episode 3, and to continue our discussion on the very important topic of mental health. We're so happy to have you, Brian, join us and share your history with us as an attorney. Both Andrew and I are attorneys ourselves. Drew is a solo practitioner. I'm a lawyer in a big firm, so we both have sort of our own stresses that go with that. So we're so thrilled to have you, and I know Andrew's going to do a little bit more of an introduction as well. So thank you again for joining us.
Well, Brian, like Adam said, we're thrilled to have you. You and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We've had a wonderful relationship. So as a friend, I'm very grateful that you're here, and for our viewers, I know they're grateful as well. I wanted to start off by introducing you. You started your career off in law. You were a practicing attorney, and then you turned to this passionate writer and author and advocate for mental health. And, what a transition. And, can you talk about that? How did you go from the, what can be at times a dreary world of law to such a in-depth area of writing and awareness?
It started with lots of cocaine,
Okay.
and I say that tongue in cheek, but it really there was a journey there that took me through 2 different eating disorders: bulimia and exercise bulimia, alcoholism, problem drinking, cocaine addiction. I've been to a psychiatric facility twice. I came close to suicide in the summer of 2005, and finally pulled myself out of it to realize that my passion was not rooted in the law, but rooted in helping people in a totally different way, in a totally different dynamic. And it was a tough journey, but it's a journey that got me on the show with some things to say about that. And it was a journey that was hard on my family, it was hard on my brother Mark, it was hard on Jeff, my parents, but they were very supportive, and it got me here. I'm very lucky to be sitting here alive.
And we're happy to have you here, and we're glad that you're here as well, because I know with your multinational campaign, The Addicted Lawyer, which is also the title of your latest book, you have a lot of good wisdom and a lot of practical wisdom that both the younger generation can really benefit from, but also people of a much older generation that may be workaholics, that may be so immersed in their own lives that they really don't take the time to take a step out and look at themselves.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because a lot of what I do is in the legal profession. Lawyers have the highest problem drinking rate, quote unquote, alcoholism rate of any profession, which is about 20 to 21%.
Right.
The U.S. rate is about 11.5%, which is still high. So look at that, compare those numbers.
Sure.
But within our demographic, millennials are over 33%. 1 in 3 millennial licensed attorney is a problem drinker. So I'm a baby boomer, but different generations have bring different problems to the office, whatever kind of office that may be. And the things I have learned hopefully can benefit all generations and pass through all generations.
Sure. And today, what do you think the root cause is? I know this may be difficult to even answer, but at least for millennials, Adam and I are millennials. What do you think is today's biggest,
Well, first off, we have to be careful when we talk about cause, because cause is scientific. There's a difference between cause and correlation.
Mm-hmm.
There are many things we can't say any one thing causes problem drinking, but there are many things that correlate strongly with it. Childhood trauma, stress at work, all kinds of personal problems could correlate, perfectionism, the type of personality you are. It's going to depend on the person. There are things that I have seen that are consistent across the board within my anecdotal experience and talking to lots of law students, lots of lawyers, and lots of professionals, whether it's tech or the business world, who are struggling with problem drinking or addiction, whether it's cocaine, alcohol, opioids. Mm-hmm. I deal with a lot of different people. I deal with people who have issues with Adderall. So I can point to certain things that I see consistently, but none of them would be cause.
And that's a very good point. And for myself included, that's not something that I think about on a daily basis, just talking out loud. So that's very helpful. And
well, you bring up a good point. When we say talking out loud, the one thing a lot of professionals, a lot of lawyers, a lot of people in high stress, high go, venture capital, things like that, occupations, what they don't like to do is talk about the problems. What we do is we compartmentalize, we push it aside. I can't deal with that because I have to deal with what's in front of me.
Sure.
The next deal, the next case.
Right.
On top of that, it's not as if in our universities or our colleges of law, mental health is like a covered topic.
Well, it is a lot more now than it was when I was going through it.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 18 years old as a freshman at Penn State, I developed anorexia. Yes, guys do get eating disorders. About 25% of all those with eating disorders are male. And this was at a time when no one was talking about it. I'm a baby boomer. It was 1979 at Penn State. We were anemia. So imagine how I felt as a guy in 1979, 1980. I have bulimia. And it's not talked about at all. You can't even say there was a stigma back then, because to be a stigma, there has to be a public conversation, and there was no conversation about it. So it's and now eating disorders are still stigmatized, but not to the extent we were then. I know lawyers, male lawyers who are dealing with eating disorders, female lawyers, females in venture capital, females in tech. Eating disorders and mental health issues don't discriminate by profession.
Right.
Although they may impact different professions differently because of the different types of people that are drawn into it.
Right. And what does it take for someone to acknowledge within themselves that they may have, one of these issues, and that they need to go talk to somebody about it? You know what?
It takes a level of self-awareness that unfortunately often doesn't come until you're looking into the abyss.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I do as part of my mantra and part of the things I try to do is get people to bring people to that level of self-awareness at the highest point possible.
Sure.
So we're not waiting for quote unquote rock bottom. For me, it took all of those things I discussed, and finally in April of 2007, a 2 multiple day blackout before I finally was ready to take that journey into recovery. So every person's going to be different, but the goal should always be to seek help at the highest possible point, regardless of profession, and not wait for that quote unquote, the thing we always hear about in television and
right.
from celebrities, rock bottom. Well, you don't want to hit rock bottom, right? Because that can lead to the mentality, well, I'm still alive, let's keep going.
Right, right.
It reminds me of a joke about speeding in Pennsylvania. So the speed limit, here you have this sign that says, speed 10 miles over, $75. I can afford that, right? 20 miles over, $100. I can afford that. We don't want to get into that kind of mentality with mental health. You can't afford it because every line could be your last. Every pill could be your last. Every drink could be your last. The goal should be up here, not down here.
Very well said. And just to let our viewers know, you know, I think a huge congratulations to you, Brian, because I believe coming up in April, this is going to mark the 12th anniversary or 12 years of sobriety for you.
Tremendous accomplishment.
Correct. Yes, April 8th, I will have 12 years free of drinking, cocaine, and my eating disorder behavior. So April 8th is a good day.
That's a wonderful day.
Although every day above ground is a good day, but April 8th is a good day to mark.
Absolutely. So to kind of follow up on that, let's talk about your book. You got The Addicted Lawyer. You know, it's been out for, I believe, a year and a half, almost 2 years, a little more.
Yeah, it'll be going on 2 years now.
Tell us about it. You know, what was going through your mind when putting this together?
What was going through my mind was that as I looked at the legal profession, as I looked at different professions, I saw that there were just so many people living in shame and stigma who just put aside and put all of their baggage in a suitcase that they just carried with them through life. I call it, you know, and they put, and most importantly, they put all the trauma of their life in that suitcase. And they would go to this job at a law firm. They just put away the suitcase of all the childhood trauma. They go to the venture capital firm. They just take the suitcase with them and put it away in the closet. We're also afraid to open that suitcase, because we look at it as a Pandora's box that we don't want to face. Who wants to open up and tear back all the layers of their life to the childhood, which for me involved fat shaming, bullying. I was a heavy kid. I was physically assaulted over my weight. There was a lot of trauma in my life that was very difficult for me. And it was trauma that someone else may say, just get over it. But that isn't what happened for me. I was a shy child. I internalized anything negative said about me. So it was something that I just carried around for many years. And it was something that was always tapping me on the shoulder, that trauma. And in my journey, I found that people tend to not want to deal with that. They just put it in the suitcase. So part of The Addicted Lawyer was allowing people and empowering people to explore what's in that suitcase. And it focuses on the legal profession. It's about half memoir, which is my story. It opens up with me trading Mavericks tickets, Dallas, and I can tell that story. In 2006, when the Dallas Mavericks went to the championship for the very first time, I was calling up my brother Mark, getting great seats and trading them to my cocaine dealer. So things like that weren't funny at the time, but you look back at it and you say, wow, I was really going through some you-know-what.
Right.
And my thinking wasn't right. The quote-unquote insanity of addiction, right? But addiction isn't insane. It's a biological process that affects so many of us. And the book also talks to other lawyers, other law students, and it has a lot of good pointers and a lot of tips on dealing with stress, what to do if you do have a problem. So allow themselves to open up to their lives.
You know, we need that. People need that. People need to hear that. And I think applying a practical approach, as you have done from personal experience, is exactly the message that needs to get out to people.
I agree. And there are a lot of people putting out that message. It's not just me. There are so many people around the world who are advocating to break the stigma around mental health, whether it's addiction, eating disorders, depression, bipolar, whatever it is. And I'm just one in a large world of voices, but every voice matters. And every person that decides they are going to take that scary step forward to help themselves or help a friend or help a loved one matters, because it really is one person at a time.
This is such a great topic because, Drew and myself, I mean, we're two millennial lawyers, and we're also passionate about mental health and, avoiding issues like substance abuse. And, if by having you today and by having Dr. Lisa last week can help, a millennial or anybody, experiencing some of these issues, we would feel tremendous about that, to just continue to pass along the message.
Absolutely. And remember, when I was when I was in the millennial range, I was a full-blown quote unquote alcoholic. I was drinking every night. I was drinking in the morning. I did my first line of cocaine in a bathroom in Dallas, Texas in 1987, and instantly became addicted to it. Cocaine and alcohol took over my life. So these problems, there may be some different generational issue. The problems themselves are universal.
Sure.
Regardless of age.
Yeah, and I think that the key is just continuing to have these discussions, to say it's okay, to open up, to get in the law school classrooms, to get in the colleges of business, to get in the universities, and even before that, I'm local here in South Florida. And I'm sure you've heard about the shooting at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School. And it's been about a year since the shooting. And just last week, 2 of the survivors, committed suicide because they had these mental health issues. And, they couldn't figure out a way to respond and move on with their life. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder is a real issue as well.
Absolutely. And I deal with people who are having suicidal thoughts, and I've had suicidal thoughts. My first trip to a psychiatric facility here in Dallas, my 2 brothers, Mark and Jeff, came in my house, and I had a weapon on my nightstand, ready to use it. And they took me down for my first trip to a psychiatric facility. So I understand that when it comes to suicidal thoughts, it happens quickly. And we can't always be there. And this is where we get into the guilt and the shame, especially with family.
Right.
Because the mindset can just go like that, where one moment you're not, and the next moment you are. And the next moment you have a plan. And the next moment you're ready to carry out that plan. And we can't be there every second to guard our loved ones.
True.
And when we are not there, that's when all that guilt and shame fills the void. And that's when it is so important to have the support, because people are going to die by suicide. And I think it's important that we not say commit suicide. It's die by suicide, take their lives, because there's a lot of stigma to commit suicide. So we have to acknowledge that it's part of the human condition, but we can save one person at a time, but we're not going to be there every moment. So when the tragedy happens, we have to be sure to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of stress, not only the demons that a person may be dealing with inside, but as you just pointed out, it does affect those around you, those closest to you. At what point, maybe you personally, were you willing to accept the support of your family, of Jeff, of Mark, during this process?
That's a great question. I'll give you some anecdotes here. My first time to Green Oak Psychiatric Facility, when my brothers came in my room, and I had the gun on my nightstand, there was cocaine everywhere, there was alcohol everywhere. They took me kicking and screaming down in the facility. They're trying to save my life. My only thought was, leave me alone. So they wanted to commit me. I'm a lawyer. I kind of knew what to say, so they couldn't. I'm not a danger to myself. I'm not a danger to others.
Right.
So much to their chagrin, they couldn't hold me, and they had to take me back home. And so we did what I call kind of the Cuban rehab, okay? Because my family's no different. They didn't know what to do. They said, well, take your car keys, stay in the house for 2 weeks. Everything's going to be okay.
Right.
My only thought to that was, I had two thoughts, actually. One, no problem. My drug dealer delivers.
Jesus, right. Yep.
And two, now they know. Now they know.
Yep.
So it wasn't now they know I have to get help. It wasn't now they know I have to rely on them for support, get their support, my brothers who love me dearly. It was now they know I have to distance from them.
Right.
Right.
Now they know I'm going to only hang out now with the people who other people. They really understand me, not my family trying to save my life.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a process accepting their love and their help.
And, even coming off that, out of this process and over the years, as you've developed, your own strength, your own image, your own reputation. Obviously, your family name is very well known. Mark, your brother with the Mavericks and Shark Tank. How have you, especially with your campaign of The Addicted Lawyer, how have you been able to separate yourself from the name of your brother and the sports team?
Why would I want to separate myself from it? It's my last name. I'll give you a funny story. I was speaking, because now and then you get hecklers. I can stick one in because of my relationship with my brother and stuff. I was speaking in Canada, and I had finished speaking. This was another speaker standing in the back of the room. He raises his hand. He says, "How does it feel only being known because you're Mark Cuban's brother?" I looked him right in the eye and I said, "You know what? It doesn't suck."
That's a great attitude.
Yes, it is.
It's my last name too. Do I do my own thing? Of course. I don't work for Mark. I used to, but I don't anymore. Do I do my own thing? Sure. I try to be my own person, but why would I want to separate from my brother? I mean, I love my brother. He loves me. My other brother works for Mark. I see no need to do that. When I have events, if the event putting in there that I'm Mark Cuban's brother is going to draw more people to hear my message, more power to them.
Sure.
Right? Doesn't bother me at all.
And that's a great way to look at it. Great way to look at it.
Now, if you're going to ask me if his fame's affected my journey, which is a question I get a lot, sure, it did, but that's not Mark's fault.
Right.
It was my fault because I was a person who had no sense of self, who did not love himself, who literally had hated himself for all of his life, failed marriages, just superficial relationships wrapped around drugs. And so all of a sudden, Mark's internationally famous, the owner of the Mavericks. All of a sudden, I can prey on this artificial fame where all of a sudden girls like me, I can walk in any bar, I can do this, I can do that. It has nothing to do with me,
Sure.
But since I didn't know who I was, why not be that?
Right.
And so from that standpoint, it had a negative effect, but that was my fault, not Mark's. I had to develop my own sense of self and sobriety, and I did.
And that's incredible. And not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people can really look at themselves, and recognize that. And that's tremendous.
Well, if you look at the history, if you look at history and you look at siblings of ultra famous people, and I take sports people out of this, play the Michael Jordan stuff out of this. But like President Jimmy Carter, his brother struggled with alcohol, tried to create his own beer brand. He was considered kind of like the black sheep, things
Right.
like that. So some siblings deal with it well, some siblings deal with it not so well. I believe Bill Clinton has a brother who struggled. But look at Mark Zuckerberg. Randy Zuckerberg has done wonderful in her own right. Harvard and has written several books. So every family dynamic is different. There's no such thing as a family without some dysfunction. It's just what that dysfunction is, how it plays into the personalities of the people involved.
We really appreciate you you opening up, and I think that's so that's so helpful for so many people. To see someone like yourself open up about their story through your book, through today's episode, and I know you speak around the country talking about this subject. And I know you often go to law schools too.
I do.
If you could share like one piece of advice to law students or even college of business students or people that may not think they have a problem, but maybe they do. What would you say?
Here's some practical advice. Take 2 days, journal out the 2 days. What does your day look like? Okay, in terms of productivity, in terms of downtime, that's step one. And step two is to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's not a weakness, it's a strength. It's okay to reach out to student services. It's okay to reach out to your employee assistance program, because whether it's depression, whether it's addiction, whatever the mental health issue is, they do not resolve on their own.
Right.
And what I tell people from the legal standpoint, and this can be applied across the board, when lawyers like to tell me that I deal with, well, I'm high functioning. I just settled this huge case. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Well, how's your marriage? What went on in your childhood? I can't talk about that. I've dealt with that. I've talked to lawyers who were physically abused, sexually abused, who haven't talked to their parents in decades, who haven't talked to a sibling in decade. All of this stuff that they have just pushed off to the side, and they call the functioning. I call it the Peter principle of recovery. When we're dealing with mental health issues and we're not in recovery, our level of function keeps going down and down and down, and we keep ducking under it. So the level of our incompetence, right? Peter principle, rising to the level of your incompetence, but the level of incompetence keeps shrinking, keeps getting lower, and we keep ducking to stay under it and readjusting what is normal and telling ourselves that is normal when finally it just drops off a cliff.
Right.
Yeah, and I can say with the legal profession itself, we have to focus about the billable hour, especially at the big firm environment, crazy deadlines, judges who don't agree with us, opposing counsels who are jerks, clients who, are paying the ass. There was a joke, somebody said a joke to me once, and they said, the practice of law would be great if we didn't have judges, clients, or opposing counsel to deal with.
That's right. Well, you have to remember that when you're young, and I am no longer young, when you're young.
Yes, you are.
When you are young, you perceive time differently than when you get to be my age, okay? And when you perceive time differently, there can be a tendency to perceive how you deal with a mental health issue differently. Because looking forward, you say, I can deal with this later, But what happens every time is they just kick the can down the road, and by the time later comes, it's exponentially worse, to the point where someone else is dealing with it, someone else is forcing you. There are consequences. You've done something that gets you kicked out of school. You've done something that gets your license taken away, versus dealing with it all that time ago before any of that happened.
Right.
Now,
Don't kick the can down the road.
Sure. Now, how does social media play into this for you at all? How has this helped with spreading this awareness? How has it helped you, if at all?
Social media has been, obviously, in this age, it's you have to remember, in my day, social media was getting on the playground, right? And a cell phone was 2 cups attached to a string.
Right.
So now, social media has played a huge role in my ability to get my message out. I'm very active on Twitter, B. Cuban. I'm very active on LinkedIn and on Facebook. It's very helpful, of course. And people reach out to me all the time on social media, whether it's asking me to privately message them on Twitter or on Facebook or LinkedIn, to asking for advice and help. And I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't try to be a counselor. I make sure I have the resources to direct people in the proper, down the proper road, because that's what I do. You lay a road, right? You lay a road of treatment, you lay a road of self-discovery. You can't make the person go down that road.
Are there any books or movies or things that you've read or watched along the way to sort of help you, or, other than the book that maybe inspired your books?
That's a tough question. I'm a big fiction reader. As far as nonfiction, there's a great book by a gentleman called Ryan Hampton about the opioid crisis. Mm-hmm. There's a wonderful book by Lisa Smith called A Girl Walked Out of a Bar. Those are books that have inspired me.
Okay.
Those would be two that inspired me.
And Brian, out here, I'm out in Ohio, and as you know, we have one of the largest opioid crises right now in the country. And I actually practice law here in Montgomery County, and the majority of my clients are involved in this epidemic. And having you here has been extremely helpful. Having you as a friend to kind of bounce things off of, or even just follow, a lot of the material that you put out there has helped me in better understanding my clients and understanding, the issues that they're going through. Because it's very easy for me to judge or say, what, you're screwed up. Now I have to try my best to get you out of it. I need to understand why. And maybe jail itself isn't the best option. It's transition them from jail to a facility, to a clinic. And a lot of people don't understand that.
The jails have become the biggest mental health providers in the country.
Yep.
Because the lack of resources. And by the way, now that you bring up Ohio, you do know I'm speaking in Columbus next week, right? And you're going to drive out.
Yes, and not testing me. So it looks like I'll be seeing you next week.
That's right. But yes, jails are the biggest mental health providers in the country, and that is a shame, because we are lacking so many resources.
Absolutely.
And it disproportionately affects marginalized groups.
Yep. Now you're a big sports fan, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
I know you're a huge Mavs fan, and I know you've been hiding out on the Dallas Cowboys. So I think it's time you kind of jump on our bandwagon.
I don't dislike the Cowboys. I think it's when they win, it's good for the city. I watch them. But I grew up in Pitt. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. Once black and gold is in your blood, it's in your blood. Understood. Pirates. On opening day, I'm a huge baseball fan. Pirates, Steelers, Penguins, and of course the Mavericks.
The Mavericks are playing the Heat tonight, and I'm in South Florida. I'm a huge Heat fan.
There was a time when that was actually a rivalry, not so much anymore.
06.
You got both of our guys retiring, which is a great story. You have Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki. They're both. Dirk hasn't announced it officially, but
he's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere.
I think he's. He starts airballing threes. He might need to call it.
Yeah, you know what, Father. I don't think Dirk would even deny Father Time has its effect on the ability to get the lift, right? Sure.
But Luka Doncic, he's the real deal.
He is the real deal, and the guy we signed from the Knicks is the real deal. So next year, this year not so much, but next year is going to be exciting.
Yeah, no.
But I still like watching. I'll watch tonight, and I love watching just to watch Luka.
Yeah, I think he's incredible. I mean, he's future for sure. Yeah. So, really appreciate you jumping on. We want to see if the audience has any questions. There's been a lot of just comments and people appreciating what you've been saying, and want to see if you have a couple more minutes to answer any questions.
Absolutely. I'm an open book. I have no secrets. I should run for office.
Uh-oh.
Hey, Cuban, yeah, what about that cocaine? Didn't you read my book?
Well, we have a question here from Diana. Brian, what was the toughest obstacle to overcome in your journey of sobriety?
That is a great question. Separating from the group I did drugs with. The separation and readjusting to a life with people who don't go out and get hammered and understanding that there's a whole world out there that doesn't do cocaine, that doesn't get hammered every night. And so the separation anxiety from the group I was safe with was probably the hardest part.
And, I've noticed that with my own clients is, they've gone through the process, they've gone through the treatment, but what happens once you kind of let them loose back into the world? What
They
are
go
they
back into the community, absolutely. And this affects marginalized demographics tremendously. When you go through something, then you go right back into your community and right back into that same peer group. Of course, you're going to be susceptible to relapse.
Right.
But I would say that was the toughest part, separating from that group and getting reacclimated to normal society, because I had done it for so many years. That's all I knew.
Yeah. Brian, can you tell the audience where they can pick up a copy of your book?
Sure, it's on Amazon, The Addicted Lawyer. You can also, there's it says buy my book on my website, or just go straight to Amazon and put in The Addicted Lawyer. Now, I also get asked quite a bit what the hardest thing I've been through to recover from is. What's my biggest recovery challenge today? Sure. It's not cocaine, because I'm not around it, right?
Right.
It's not alcohol. It's just alcohol has now become, 12 years in, has become kind of just background noise to me. I can be around people that drink. Do I walk into bars? No. But that's just because that's not my peer group anymore, right?
Right.
But what do I have to do every day? I have to eat. So as somebody who struggled with exercise bulimia, which is obsessive compulsive exercise for the primary purpose of offsetting calories, that is my biggest challenge today, maintaining a moderate, healthy exercise regime as compared to my food intake. Not getting obsessed with exercise because I ate a piece of pizza. That's my biggest challenge, and I have a lot of support. I'm still in therapy. I see a psychiatrist every week. I take antidepressants every day. I don't find any shame in that. I suffer from clinical depression. So it's an ongoing daily thing, just trying to do the next right thing, trying to help one person, trying to be better in my recovery.
And and that's really, to kind of hone things back here, the beauty of Pitch Investors Live and what this group has done with this technology has been able to put all three of us together. But more importantly, somebody such as yourself that is able to sit, at home or at your office and really share this message. As you said, you travel all over the country. You do keynotes. You're at law schools.
Remember this. Let's forget lawyers. If you are building any business, if you are an investor, whatever that is, if that's what you do, is just invest in businesses, and you have all of this baggage, it's going to come up and it's going to negatively impact you in some form and at some time in your life. And that means it's probably going to negatively impact your ability to do business. I don't know where that'll be. I don't know how it'll be, because I don't know who you are. But that is just proven time and time again that it will, the pressure cooker will open up and it will steam out and it will have a negative impact.
There's a question here from Synergy eTherapy, who's our last guest. What do you think is missing in substance abuse treatment programs?
In terms, I think the whole model is out of whack. Okay, people get confused on what is treatment versus what is peer support. There are residential treatment programs out there whose primary thing is 12-step, and AA is the largest of that. And I think I got sober in 12-step. I think that's fine, but that's not treatment. Okay, we have the opioid. The biggest problem right now is with the opioid issues, where can't prescribe the medication that people need to tail back their cravings.
Right.
And so what happens is you relapse and you overdose and people die. And so we have that issue as well. There is a resistance to medication-assisted therapy. Okay, not everyone, abstinence is not for everybody. People who are dealing with opioid addiction, whether it's pills or heroin, may need medication-assisted therapy. And there is a resistance to that in a lot of places, and a resistance to that in a lot of residential treatment facilities.
That's interesting. I actually do have one question, because we didn't really dive too much into it, but I know you've mentioned it a couple of times in your sort of your BDD issues and
yes, body dysmorphic disorder.
If you could just tell the audience a little bit about what that means and some of the
sure.
your experience with it.
Absolutely. Body dysmorphic disorder, which is something I struggled with for decades and still work on today, is when you take a perceived small or even non-existent perceived defect in your body and you exaggerate it in your perceived reflection to the point where it affects your ability to function quote unquote normally in life. For me, it was my stomach. No matter how thin I got, no matter how muscular I got, I also was addicted to anabolic steroids and almost lost my leg. I saw this huge fat stomach, or this quote unquote fat pig in the mirror, as the kids like to call me at school. For other people, it's their hair. For other people, it may be tanning. For other people, it may be a small blemish that they think covers their own face. And body dysmorphic disorder isn't talked about a lot, but it affects 2 to 3% of the population, men and women equally, and it has a strong correlation with suicide. It correlates with childhood bullying. It correlates with fat shaming. It correlates with self-harm. There's a lot of different things and it's a real thing. One of the issues I have with it is when celebrities throw out body dysmorphia like it's a fashion statement. Mm-hmm. I believe it was, what's her name? Chelsea Handler?
Chelsea.
Is that her name?
Chelsea Handler.
I remember she made a comment, was it last year, the year before, says everyone has body dysmorphia. No.
I remember that.
No, body dysmorphia is a DSM-5 diagnosis. People die from it. Everyone has normative discontent, where we all look in the mirror one day or another and say, that sucks, right? And it lasts for a little bit and we go on with our business. Everyone doesn't look in the mirror and not leave the house for days. Everyone does not look in the mirror and become suicidal. So it irritates me when people throw it around like it's something you buy on Rodeo Drive,
right?
Because it's a very serious disorder. And it's a difficult disorder to treat.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for people to know that this is a real issue, and it's something that we need to pay closer attention to, because it may be going on and we're just not acknowledging it,
Well, I mean, mental health issues are certainly going on. Everyone listening to this and everyone watching this broadcast is going to either dealing with one or know someone who's dealing with one. Every single person.
That's true.
Whether you know it or not.
Oh,
exactly.
Well, I mean, Brian, thank you so much. And we can't thank you enough for, being here and opening up about everything. And, for those who haven't had a chance to read your book, I personally recommend it. I've, had a chance to read it when you had released it, but it's a powerful book. And I think you being out there as a resource and being so open about being a resource is
if you're struggling, email me. I'm accessible. I'll give you my input. I'll do what I can to help you find a path. Now, of course, I can't make you take that path, but if you have questions, you're struggling, someone's struggling, email me. Just email me through my website. I'm very accessible.
Well, that's really nice of you. And if the audience has any more questions, oftentimes what happens with these shows is that after we finish the live broadcast, people watch it after and then they continue to type in questions. So, if you're watching this after the live presentation, we encourage you to ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer them, or if Brian can answer them. So thank you, Brian, so much for coming on our show.
Thank you, Brian.
We really appreciate it, and look forward to chatting with you again soon.
It was an honor to be on. Thank you for having me. Drew, I'll see you in Columbus.
Yes, sir. Next week. Thank you, Brian, very much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.